Thank you. At first, I have to thank Paul for giving an opportunity to me to give this talk and to speak about this Finnish Sawfly project. Well, my aim is in this project is to give a new model for, especially for entomologists, how to do things better. And of course, the main idea is to demonstrate how to add the barcoding step for the normal taxonomic workflow and the specimen handling. And the background for this is that about 4 years ago I started collecting sawflies, and that was quite eye-opening to me because, well, I have been collecting Lepidoptera, butterflies and moths just from my childhood, and it has been very different. It was very eye-opening to start working on sawflies, and I realized why the situation in Finland and probably in most other countries is very biased, so that there are some groups are very popular. One reason for that certainly is that some groups are more attractive. Butterflies, for example, are beautiful and many people like them. Some small insects are not that attractive looking, but I would say that there is another very important reason, and it is that when I started working on sawflies, I quite soon realized that I will never get names to them. We have some experts in sawflies. I was working for some years with them quite hard, but then I realized that I will never get the identifications, maybe to the genus level mostly, but not to the species level. It is simply impossible to get the names, and I think that is, I know many other collectors who started working with the sawflies in Finland as well, and they quite soon stopped because they never got the names, and that is what usually collectors and everybody, taxonomists, and we want to get the names to the specimens that we have. And I was not able to do that, so I was planning a different strategy. Okay, a few words about the sawflies. They are hymenopterans. They are actually a paraphyletic set of basal lineages of hymenopterans. All the other hymenopterans, the aculeatan wasps, actually are come within the sawflies, so they are phylogenetically nested in the sawflies. So sawflies are easy to identify from all other wasps because they are lacking this waste that all the other wasps are having, or hymenopterans are having, like parasitoids and bees and stinging wasps and those. The sawflies are not having this waste, and that way easy to identify to that level. But when we go further, they are extremely difficult to identify to the species level for many different reasons. One reason that I became interested in them is that they are like Lepidoptera, they are herbivorous. They are typically very host-specific, and they are feeding on plants. There are some exceptions, but it was quite easy to move to that group from the Lepidoptera. They are also very rich in the northern latitudes. Actually, in some groups, the species number is increasing towards the north, especially in the subfamily Nematinae that are specialized to the willows that are also increasing in the species numbers towards the north. Okay, as I said, they are extremely difficult to identify. The literature of sawflies is actually very well accessible because German researchers, they have scanned all the literature. It's available. It's not publicly delivered, but it is available. So for that reason, one could imagine that it is quite easy to start. But there is very little literature that is well illustrated with good color photos and so on. So that is what it is a tradition. Sawfly guys, they haven't been doing it that way. They have concentrated on making keys, and as you know, the keys are made by those who don't need them to those who can't use them. So that is also my experience, that keys are actually, they are so complex things, I could never get the names based on the keys, because the main problem with the keys is that they are dichotomous, and if you make a single mistake in a long key, you will never enter the correct species. So I actually don't find the keys many times very useful, unfortunately. Okay, so the outcome of all that is that the collection specimens easily remain unidentified, and there are also very few experts worldwide in sawflies. And that is the case, of course, and the situation is much worse even in very many insect groups. Like for example, in Finland, just to illustrate how biased the expertise is, we have about more than 1,000 people who are working with Lepidoptera. We have maybe 50 people who are interested in beetles, maybe 10 people working with true bugs, a few with flies and parasitoid wasps and these kind of mega diverse groups, very few experts, and there are many very big groups we don't have any experts, like sciarid midges or cecidomyids or this kind of very, very diverse groups that are without any experts. And the reason is actually, I would say the main reason is that they are so difficult to, it's not possible to work with them based on the morphology alone. So here is where the barcodes come into the game. Okay, so as I already said, I started collecting sawflies 2014, not many years ago. I have been quite intensively collecting them since that. I am a keen, I like very much field work. I have been collecting thousands of specimens in a few years, and I noticed that I will never get the names to them. Then I started, actually about 1 year ago, I decided to do it, and I started doing it in a bit different way. I collected the samples directly to the freezer. I first pinned them, I put them to the freezer, and in the winter time I was taking legs, actually 2 legs of specimens, one intended to be used for the barcoding to get the names and the other for the other purposes. I started doing that systematically a couple of hours every evening to spend on the sawflies. I really like it, so that is my hobby. I haven't been doing that in my work time at all, so this is my hobby. So doing that and also spreading the specimens, because I find it also very important to prepare the specimens in a good way, because I know that people more easily become interested and start working if there are good photos available of very nicely spread specimens. So that is what I also have been doing, even though it has taken quite a lot of time. But I have been doing that for over 3,000 specimens, and I'm now working with my last year's samples, so I will have many thousands more by the end of this winter. Yeah, and 2 legs per specimens to the absolute alcohol, one meant to be used for the DNA barcoding. And at the moment I have been photographing these samples. I haven't been doing that myself. Luckily I have had assistants to help me in that. And so in short, the idea is that to present a way to escape from this dead end, to not to be able to work on this kind of difficult groups. Yeah, so just quickly to present how I am doing, and what is very important also to tell at that point is that certainly this protocol can be modified and have to be modified for different groups, because sawflies, for example, they are medium-sized. They are not usually very small. When we are dealing with extremely small specimens, we have to do some steps in a bit different way. So I have been collecting samples. I have been rearing also them quite intensively. Then, as I said, I have been pinning them, putting them to the flat boxes and to the freezer already in the field, moving them to my home, and then working in the winter time and pulling legs and spreading them. They look like this after the field step. And then I have been putting the legs to this kind of 2 milliliters vials and spreading the specimens. You see the specimens in the boxes, you don't see them in detail, but. And then in the next step, I have been entering the data, the collection data, to the bolt sheets. That of course takes some time. And then I have been photographing, and in the photography, I have been using this so-called focus stacking system. You probably are aware of the stack photography and the principles to get very good quality photos. But I'm not sure if you know about this focus stacking. That is a new, extremely easy way to get very accurate, three-dimensionally accurate pictures of anything. And this focus stacking, actually, in that system, the stacking is done in the camera itself. So you just have to, just by one click, you get a stack of eight layers of the specimen, and the camera automatically combines them, and you just get the output. You don't have to do anything with any programs, so it takes 20 seconds to get a perfect photo. And that combined with the good lamps. Lamps are important. We are using Philips lamps that are specifically designed for this kind of use. I have noticed that not many people know that there are this kind of lamps that are actually giving exactly the same spectrum as the sun, or the sun spectrum. So we also don't need to do any photoshopping for the photos. Just maybe sometimes the brightness has to be adjusted a bit. But it has been very rapid system, this focus stacking, and you can get really good quality photos in a short time, and really easy and straightforward way. Okay, and then the final steps for the barcoding. I have first given codes for the tissue samples because I am keeping one leg, so I have to give a different codes for the tissues and for the sample IDs. To the bowl. So in the next step I have labeled the specimens and given the sample IDs for them, and then I have uploaded the data to the bowl, and that is actually what we are right now doing for the first batch of about 3,000 specimens. And then we ship the samples to here for barcoding. We have agreed that Paul that we will sequence these specimens now with the SQL protocol with Paul, and I'm really much hoping that this system works very well for the sawflies, but I don't know if there is previous experience of that, how well the SQL protocols work for this kind of materials, but of course I'm hoping it works very well. And then that is what I finally get, hopefully, the very good resolution clustering for my specimens, and by that I can cluster my specimen, and I could probably very much more easily get the names for them as well, because there is actually quite good taxonomic framework. The problem is that the characters to identify sawfly species are so difficult. It takes you basically usually have to dissect the genitalia, and would be extremely time consuming to do that. So I believe that this saves my time a lot to do it that way, if everything works as planned. Okay, to conclude, so I am hoping to present this protocol at least to my Finnish colleagues. Hopefully, maybe I'm hoping also to make maybe an article to demonstrate that how you can work with thousands of specimens of this kind of difficult groups at just the barcoding step. That is not much. At least in time, it doesn't require a lot of extra time, and then you can much better, in a much better way, you can identify your samples and get an idea of the species. Even, of course, would work in a conditions where you don't know anything about, like a tropical groups where you don't know anything. You could get a nice clustering that way. As the sequencing costs are dropping down, I'm hoping that this is also the money won't be a big issue. If the sequencing costs finally drop to the $1 per specimen or $2 per specimen, at least for me, it would be very tempting to start working that way rather than to start dissecting them individually. I would say it is a price that would work for this kind of protocol quite well, at least in my country. I would say that probably many people would turn to do it that way rather than spending years and years to dissect the specimens and do it in a traditional way. So I'm hoping that people start doing it that way increasingly, and even identifying the samples. Maybe sometimes in the future you are also providing an identification service commercially that is not library construction, but just very simple protocol that people can send the samples, just give an IDs and nothing else, and then you sequence them for maybe hopefully with a quite low price. And also these kind of things could be done also just for the identification of the specimens. Yeah, and I'm also hoping that this could be an additional step for the museum digitization projects, because digitization is done in a large scale in many museums, and it wouldn't require too much to add this routinely this barcoding step, because they are, at least in Finland, they are always photographing the samples. All the data is entered to the database, so just also adding the barcoding to those programs also would be very nice to see getting a common common practice. Okay, so that is the basic idea of my talk, and I'm very happy to learn your ideas and suggestions. Thank you.